This is called the perfection of imperfection. Something very wonderful. Good evening, everyone. Those in the hall, thank you. It's nice to have some live bodies here, and most of you who are online. Welcome to this Dharma last-minute pop-up on the sutras. Drinking deeply from the source. In preparation for this, I pulled out copies of 4 or 5 of the major Mahayana sutras, like the Heart Sutra and the Diamond Sutra and the Sarangama Sutra and the Lankavatara Sutra, and several others, the Lotus Sutra. But what drew my eye first, and we'll see how far we get over these weeks, is something called the Platform Sutra. Pretty much all Buddhist sutras are purported to be the words of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha, the interactions of the Buddha, except 2. One is the Vimalakirti Sutra, and Vimalakirti was a layman, and even though the Shakyamuni Buddha is somewhat in it, the major protagonist is of this layman Vimalakirti, great sutra. I think I've taught it over the years. And the other one is called the Platform Sutra. And the Platform Sutra is the teachings of the 6th Chan or Zen patriarch, Wei Nang. It's quite profound. And it really has the pith of the Buddha's teachings in it. So, according to the history, and modern historians don't really begin to question the whole history of Zen and Chan and how it was put together, because it was really put together for meaning and purpose. And I think less attention to the actual historical dates and consistency of things that we're so concerned about. But we do know that there was a great Indian meditation master who came from India, South India, to China. Buddhism had already been in China for several centuries, which actually had the support of the imperial house, the Emperor Wu. But Bodhidharma brought the teaching that pointed directly to the mind. So even though a lot of the forms of Buddhism, more in the religiosity that had developed, Bodhidharma brought the kind of pith of the meditative tradition and the tradition of awakening. Supposedly he wasn't very well received by the emperor and others, so he sort of retired, went to Shaolin and lived in a cave for, I forget, 7 or 9 years just meditating until he was discovered and began to teach. But he really didn't teach for that long, but had a number of disciples. So Wei Nang is a disciple of the 5th patriarch from Bodhidharma, and he became the 6th patriarch. So this is often called the Sutra of the 6th patriarch. It is often called the Platform Sutra. You might see it in that form because there are sections in here where he does his formless ordination, and traditionally in Chinese Buddhism, when there was any kind of ordination, they would erect a platform in the monastery, sort of a little higher platform made of wood or a brick that the ordination would take part on. So since in this teaching he did give this ordination to his formless precepts, it's also called the Platform Sutra. And it begins with, primarily in the first chapter, he tells the story of his life. And especially in the meditative traditions, the traditions in which awakening, enlightenment, the attainment of Buddhahood is openly talked about and is the goal of practice, it is often more instructive for us to be acquainted with the lives of these great masters almost more than their teachings, because oftentimes it is through the living example of these great masters that we kind of get it, or get the possibility of it, or understand things in a more personal and deeper way. And his story is quite wonderful. People familiar with it? Some are? Nobody is. Okay. Because I have taught it in the past, but as the years go by, I am less clear about when I taught it. So anyhow, so this is the Platform Sutra, and this is the first section. So the master takes his seat at a temple to expound the teachings of the Mahaprajnaparamita and to transmit the formless precepts. Seated before him in this gathering, there were 10,000 monks, nuns, lay people, along with the magistrate of the district, more than 30 officials and 30 scholars. Together they had asked the master to explain the teachings of the Mahaprajnaparamita. So within Mahayana Buddhism, there is this section of teachings that relate to Prajnaparamita, which is this perfection of wisdom. And prajna is not a wisdom of knowledge. It is not a knowledge. It is not a wisdom of scholarship. It is not a wisdom of intellectual understanding. Prajna means to have a direct experience, a knowing of the truth of Buddhism, which produces wisdom. It's a different kind of wisdom than what often we think. A wisdom is somebody who is very learned, very intellectually acute. But here, as you will see, it is not about intellectual understanding, conceptual understanding, or scholarship or academic capacities at all. It's an intuitive understanding of the nature of mind. And then the magistrate instructed one of the master's disciples to make a record, to write it down for future generations so this teaching could be transmitted. So the master begins to speak. Good friends, purify your minds by reciting the teachings of Mahaprajnaparamita. He then stopped speaking while he purified his own mind. So this is and I invite us all to spend a moment or two joining that vast assembly. So what does it mean to purify our minds? I mean, it has many deeper meanings, but it means let us not listen to this with our intellectual mind, our thinking mind, our mind that is always interpreting. You know that mind? This reminds me of that, and this is that, and I understand this is that. But listen with a deeper mind. And to do that, we need to purify our mind, which means purify our minds of all the things that are going on in it. So everybody, let's just purify our minds. Purify our minds means we let go of the past thoughts, we let go of future thoughts, we let go of any thoughts about what we're doing. We empty our minds. To empty your mind does not mean that thoughts stop or sounds stop or anything. It means that the mind that grasps and holds on to anything, we let go of. We allow the mind to rest, we allow the mind to be at ease. So let's just take a moment to do what the master said. I mean, he did ask them to recite the Prajnaparamita because all these things were memorized. These were, a vast assemblage of monks and nuns who this was their practice. So let us take a moment to purify our mind, put it in a state of open receptivity. The mind is awake, alert, but at ease, not holding on to anything. After a long time, he spoke again. So we took a short time. So he starts, interestingly enough, talking about his history. And his father died when he was young, I'm sort of paraphrasing, and he was raised by his widowed mother. They were destitute. And so he, being the son, they lived in great hardship and poverty, and he basically would collect firewood from the forest and sell it in the market. Right? Very subsistence living. One day, a shopkeeper ordered a load of firewood brought to the store. After the delivery, he paid me. And there are various versions of this sutra that have been found, but basically, as he's walking out of the store, there is somebody, traditionally a monk, or could be there were people who wandered about sort of reciting the various Buddhist teachings, and sort of people would give them offerings. Sort of like, I don't know what you'd call them. Some of them were monks, but some of them were, I don't know if troubadour is the right word, but sort of that's how they earned their living. They memorized Buddhist sutras or Buddhist teachings, and they would go through the marketplaces. And so this customer was reciting the Diamond Sutra out loud. The Diamond Sutra, like the Heart Sutra, is one of the great wisdom sutras. Short but brilliant. As soon as I heard the words, my mind immediately felt clear and awake. Now, traditionally, there are various versions of this sutra. So traditionally, it is said the verse that really kind of brought him up short was, and these are different translations, abide nowhere and let the mind come forth. Another translation is, let your mind function freely without abiding anywhere or in anything. Activate the mind without dwelling on anything. So this very famous line from the Diamond Sutra points to a mind, to a knowing that is a naturally spontaneous functioning that is the inherent mind of all beings, which of course all beings includes us. Most of us are putting things into our mind, we're controlling our mind, we're manipulating our mind, even in meditation. But here this verse says, your mind, let it be free. Don't try to control it. Don't try to nail it down. Don't try to manipulate it. Don't even turn it into thoughts. Just let it flow. It's like, just let the river flow. Let the river of awareness flow. And for some reason, when he heard this, he had something kind of moved him at a deep level, some kind of understanding, some kind of intuition that this was true. And maybe we've all had those moments where we read something or hear something or listen to something, and something just kind of stops us in our tracks, and we it's deeper than thought. It's like something touches us deeply, and we know what we're experiencing, what we're hearing, what we're reading is truth. And I think we've all had that experience in one way or another. I think sometimes we meet people like that. You meet somebody and you realize, this is an exceptional being. There's something about that person that strikes us deeply. And in this way with the teachings, he heard that. So as soon as I heard these words, my mind felt clear and awake, and he asked the man, what is the scripture you're reciting? Where did you learn it? And the man tells him that he was at the monastery of the fifth Chanzen patriarch, and his congregation includes 1,000 disciples, and he was therefore, and the fifth patriarch was promulgating the recitation and the study of the Diamond Sutra, which this man had done. And he says, and the master had said that if you really memorize the Diamond Sutra, they could have the possibility of seeing their own natures and immediately become Buddhas. As soon as I heard this, I felt drawn by something from a past life. Now that's the way he made sense of it. It's a very traditional way. It's like, because we can go, we can feel a response to something. And yet oftentimes we would go, there's really nothing in my family of origin. there's no, you know what I'm saying? We can't find something in our own life in terms of the storyline of it, why something would move us deeply or why we might find our life moving in a certain direction. I mean, it could be like, what are we all doing here? Listening to a talk on the Platform Sutra. It's certainly not in our tradition. Our families didn't grow up talking about the Platform Sutra and awakening and the Buddha mind, right? And yet here we are. So in traditional Buddhism, they would say, well, it's because in a past lifetime I had a connection to these teachings. But, though that's one way of understanding it. But I think all of us need to acknowledge that there are things that we don't understand, and yet, for some reason, we are drawn in a direction. And, we could kind of make up reasons for it, but in the end of it, we go, yeah, there's something that's just drawing me, right? Yeah. So it's like that. So immediately, he, as soon as he heard that this teaching was being promulgated at this mountain in this monastery by the fifth patriarch, he immediately wanted to go. And so he made arrangements for somebody to look after his mother, and off he went. I didn't tell you one thing, which is very important. Wei Nang, his name is illiterate. He's illiterate. He's poverty-stricken, uneducated. Okay? So this is another reason why this sutra is so loved. Right? Many people think there are all kinds of reasons why they can't develop themselves in Dharma, why they can't wake up, why they can't see into the nature. It's too deep or too complex. And here's the sixth patriarch, illiterate, uneducated, poverty-stricken. Right? And yet, his mind could understand what? Understand his own nature. Right? So many of us think to master Buddhism, there's a whole body of teachings we have to master. Well, there are a lot of teachings, and a lot of them are helpful. But to understand the nature of our own mind, the nature of what's the nature of reality, what's the nature of thought, what's the nature of my experience, all you need to do is look inward into our own minds. You don't need any education. Actually, perhaps being uneducated and illiterate, he had an advantage over the rest of us. We think too much. So traditionally, when you come to a monastery, the first thing you do is you pay your respects to the teacher. So he went and paid his respects to the teacher, and the teacher asked, this is Wei Nang. The teacher asked him, fifth patriarch asked him, where are you from? And what exactly do you hope to get from me by coming to this mountain to pay your respects? And basically, Wei Nang says, I'm just a commoner from Sinchao, and the reason I came all this way to pay my respects is I want to be a Buddha. I don't want anything else. That's like, I don't know what that's like. What's that like? It's like going to a cardinal, and the cardinal says, "Why are you here?" "Well, I want to be Christ." You'd probably get what? Burnt at the stake or something. You know what I mean? But that's what it's like. He's basically, I want to be God. I don't know how to say it, compare, but here is this illiterate, poverty-stricken young, and he's appearing before the fifth patriarch, and he has such confidence. Yeah, I want to be a Buddha. So what does the fifth patriarch say to him? But you're from Lingnan. Lingnan was an area in southern China that they weren't Han Chinese. They were more like hill people, so they were considered not that sophisticated, not that educated. Sort of coarse. I don't know what we say. Sort of like hicks. Somebody's a hick. Somebody's a hillbilly, in a negative way. It's sort of like that. It's like, what? So he says, and, so you're from Lingnan, and you're a jungle rat as well. How could you possibly be a Buddha? See, the fifth patriarch's playing with him, He's playing with him. And I replied, people may come from the north or the south, not their Buddha nature. The lives of this jungle rat and the master aren't the same, but how can our Buddha nature be different? Can you see his confidence to kind of, answer him right back? Yeah. You may be a great master. And also, I think it was sort of like people from northern China were more sophisticated, people from southern China are a little looked down upon, less educated. So he says, yeah, that could be true. You could be a sophisticated, master from the north. I could be just an uneducated jungle rat. But our nature, the nature of our mind, is no different. It takes a lot of grounding in his own truth, to speak the truth. The master was about to say something more to me, but then he saw his attendants were standing there. He didn't say anything to me. A novice led me to the milling room where I peddled a millstone for more than 8 months. This is, again, very important. He didn't send him to the meditation hall. He didn't send him to the Dharma hall. He sent him to the place where they were milling the flour, separating the husks from the... And for 8 months, that's all he did. Never heard a teaching, never went into the meditation hall. Was just sent to work. Interesting. Because we think to wake up is a function of sitting meditation. But if you actually look at a lot of the stories and the dialogues of the great masters, a lot of their awakenings, most of their awakenings actually happened in interactions. Oftentimes those interactions happened when they were working. So this is very kind of pure, early, what's called Zen. Not that people weren't sitting or meditating, but it's not that reliance that it's only going to come about through one way. Okay, so he's illiterate, right? He's not given any Dharma teachings. He's not allowed to go in the meditation hall. He's just put to work. So one day, the fifth patriarch suddenly called all the monks and disciples together. After they had assembled, he said, I have told you that the greatest concern for a human being is life and death. Right? I mean, the most significant thing in our life is death. Meaning the most significant thing in our life is that this whole deal, what we call this world, this life, is all impermanent. It has no solidity. It has no staying power. All of us are going to die. Everybody we know is going to die. And everything we've accumulated, all our things, all our dramas, everything that really consumes us in this life, all add up to nothing, because one day we're just going to exit. So he says, this is the greatest concern for a human being, to understand that our life is unfolding within this great cycle of birth and death. This is called the great matter. But you disciples spend your days making offerings, just looking ways to reap merit, and not to get out of the bitter sea of samsara. So he's sort of castigating. He's saying, to his disciples, a monk, you spend your time studying and reading and doing good meritorious things and chanting, and these are all things. None of this is going to liberate you from the ocean of delusion, ocean of suffering. Okay? If you're blind to your own true nature, how can you find the doorway to true merit? He says, go back to your rooms and just look into yourself. Those of you who are wise, make use of this prajna wisdom, this higher wisdom that's of your own nature. And then write me a gata, which is like a poem. When I read your gata, any of you who understands what's truly important, I will give you my robe, I'll give you my dharma, and I'll appoint you the sixth patriarch. Hurry. As if there's a fire. Right? So he says, I'm the fifth patriarch. I'm not going to be around forever either. Passing on the robe and the bowl are sort of like, these are the outward manifestations of what Bodhidharma has passed on from patriarch to patriarch. He says, I'm ready to pass it on to somebody who has realization of their true nature, right? Not somebody who's just a good monk, a good practitioner. You know what I'm saying? He's saying that's not liberating. Having heard these instructions, all his disciples went back to their rooms, and they said to each other, well, there's really no need for us to do this. Because their precept instructor, like the head monk, he says, he's gonna be the one to write it, so we don't really have to. Why should we write it? Let's not worry about it. And so nobody wrote anything. Okay. Anyhow, there was a poll. Now, this is very interesting. So the head monk, Shen Xie, thought, no one is going to submit a mind poem because I'm their instructor. But if I don't submit one, how can I tell the patriarch if the understanding of my mind is deep or not? It would be right for me to write a poem to the patriarch to reveal my understanding, but what if it's wrong? Or what if I'm doing it for the wrong motive because I just want to get the robe and the bowl and become the patriarch? Then I'd just be a bigger fool who thinks he can take on the position of a sage. But if I don't submit a poem, I'll never receive the Dharma. Sounds very neurotic. So he's going back and forth. Supposedly they say in another translation, I think 7 or 9, he worked himself into such a fit that 9 or 10 or 11 times he'd walk down the hall with his poem to the master's door and then turn back, because he doubted his own realization, he doubted his own understanding, and anyhow, he got himself all worked up. So finally he came up with a plan that he wouldn't go to the master's room and submit it to him. He would just write it out and post it in this hallway that everybody passed during the day. So he thought to himself, when the patriarch sees my poem and reads these words, if he comes to find me the moment I see him, I will tell him then that I wrote it. But if he sees my poem and it's not good enough and I'm really deluded and the obstruction of my past karma is great, well then he'll tell me that too. It's hard for me to know what his mind is. So anyhow, in the middle of the night, he takes his lantern, he's got his poem written out, and he posted his poem. Do you want to hear his poem? Tell me what you think of it. The body is a Bodhi tree. Bodhi is enlightenment. So the body is the sort of like the Buddha came to enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. So the body is like the Bodhi tree. The mind is like a standing mirror. A mirror just reflects everything. Always try to keep it clean. Don't let it gather dust. Right? The body, mind are pure, reflecting. The dust of conceptualization, the dust of the world, right? Can get on it, like it covers. Just always keep it clean. What do you think? Would you pass him? Would you pass on, would you anoint him your successor? You would. You're pretty good. No. Nah. All right. So the next day, the fifth patriarch was going down the hall. He saw the Gata. Mm-hmm. And he said, it would be good if we keep this Gata posted for deluded people to recite. If they rely on it for their practice, they won't fall into the three unfortunate states of existence, and it'll be a great help to anyone who cultivates the Dharma. So it seems like he's giving the approval to it, right? He said this will be a great help to people. Help them in their practice, help to support them. He gathered all the disciples together, they offered incense before it. Everybody was filled with admiration. And he encourages them all to recite this and to practice what is said about always keeping the mind clean and pure. They'll never regress. Everybody deeply respected and exclaimed how wonderful that poem was. Later that day, the fifth patriarch called the head monk into his room, said, "Did you write the Gata? Was that yours? If so, you're ready to receive my Dharma." The monk replied, "I'm guilty, it's true. I was the one who wrote it, but I don't dare ask for the patriarchship and for the master's consideration. Please just help me understand whether I have enough wisdom to understand what is truly important or not." So the fifth patriarch says to him, "This poem of yours shows your understanding has only reached the threshold and is not entered inside." Okay. So outwardly, right, the patriarch praised. Yeah, said, this is good practice. Yeah, purify the mind, keep it clean. Don't let thoughts, delusions accumulate. Practice always in your meditation, your day, not being attached to anything, Sound like good practice? Good practice. He said, you're only at the threshold. You haven't entered the door and into the room. If ordinary people practice your poem, they won't regress. But someone with such an understanding who seeks perfect enlightenment will never realize it based on your poem. If you want to enter the door, you have to see your true nature, your Buddha nature. Go back and meditate on this for a few days and write me another Gata. If you're able to enter the door and see your nature, I will give you the robe and the Dharma. He left. After several days, he didn't write anything. Why couldn't he write anything? Because he didn't have that understanding of the nature of his mind. Now one day, during that time, remember Wei Nang's in the whole day, pounding rice, pounding grain. He knew nothing what was going on, right? So one day there's a young monk goes by and he's reciting that poem, right, of the head monk. And Wei Nang asked him, what is that poem you're reciting? He said, don't you know? The abbot has just told us that nothing's more important than life and death. He wants to pass on the robe and the Dharma, so he told all the disciples to write a poem and show their understanding. And one of our senior monks, Shenhui, wrote this poem, and now it's posted. And the patriarch has said that anybody who understands with this gata will see their nature and will achieve liberation. Wei Nang goes, I've been in the mill for 8 months. I've never gone in front of the main patriarch's hall. Could you take me there? I'd like to make an offering to this poem. So the novice led me there. I was illiterate, so I had to ask somebody to read it to me. Read it. So there was somebody there who could read it for him. And then he said to the I forget, there was a scholar or somebody there who happened to be there in the hall, and read to him the monk's poem. And then he says, would you mind if I gave you a poem of mine? Would you write it down? And the man supposedly was just flabbergasted, like, what? He's this illiterate rice pounder. He's still a layman. He's not ordained at all, right? He's just working in the kitchen, right? He said, yeah, I have something I want to write. So, do you want to hear his gata? Now remember the other one, right? The body is a Bodhi tree, the mind is like a standing mirror. Always try to keep it clean, don't let it gather dust. That was so listen to his. Bodhi, or awakened mind, doesn't have any trees. The mirror doesn't have a stand. Our Buddha nature is forever pure. Where do you get this dust? And then he composed another one, which is, the mind is the Bodhi tree, the body is the mirror stand, the mirror itself is so clean, dust has no place to land. So the first poem has no deep understanding. It's taking place in the world of what we call duality. Right? There's the mind, and then there are the things that arise in the mind, and if we're not careful, the things that arise in the mind will make the mind dirty, so you gotta always keep cleaning the mind. Can you see? There's you, there's the mind, there's the things that arise in the mind, and the things that dirty the mind. There's all these different things. It's a world of separation, it's a world of duality, it's a world, right? This is what the fifth patriarch mentioned. He hasn't entered. And so what does Wei Nang say? There is no tree. There is no mirror. No tree, no mirror. There's nowhere for anything called dust, to land. Right? This is what is this? This is the mind, open, spacious, aware, of which anything that arises in it is no different than it. And that capacity of allowing the mind, remember, to be free, unbound, resting in its own nature, is enough. The other one is what? A lot of work. Remember? Yeah, you got to be cleaning every day. We all know that, right? We got to keep this mind, right, under control. Right? We're always mopping up after it. Right? We're always trying to. But this is not about the phenomena of the mind. This is not about thoughts and feelings and perceptions and memories. This is not about stuff. This is not about problems or issues. This is about the true nature of mind. The true nature of whose mind? Our mind. Right? That all the things that appear in it are no different than it itself. And nothing has any permanence or solidity. So it's like that. Anyhow, when all the other monks in the courtyard saw what I had written, they were dumbfounded. Not too long after the fifth, he went back to the milling room. The fifth patriarch happened to come by, and you know what he said to everybody? This one doesn't get it either. It is a whole undercurrent of competition and rivalry, jealousy. Right? So the fifth patriarch, he knew from his first interview, remember, that this illiterate monk, non-monk, layman, had a profound understanding of Dharma. And this poem just reaffirmed that. But he knew that everybody else would be jealous because, he's an illiterate layman. He doesn't know anything about Buddhism. He doesn't meditate even. Right? So he kind of, no, this is no good. That night, and there are different translations of it. Yeah, So that night, late at night, midnight or later, he's called secretly to the master's room. And so this is another version. So the patriarch put a curtain over his door so no one would see. And this is like at midnight or something, the third watch of the night. And he read the Diamond Sutra to me. When he reached the line, "You should give rise to a thought and not be attached to anything," I suddenly realized that nothing in this world is separate from our own nature. And I said, "Master, how could I have guessed that my own nature was already pure? How could I have guessed that my own nature was already beyond birth and death? How could I have guessed that my own nature was already complete? How could I have guessed that my own nature was already unshakable? And how could I have guessed that my own nature could give birth to all things?" The patriarch knew I had realized my own true nature and said to me, "Unless people know their mind, studying the Dharma is useless. But once somebody knows their own mind and sees their own nature, that person is called a master, a teacher of humans and gods, a Buddha." Yes, we have to be very careful here, okay? Because because you could take this to mean, so all the study, all the meditation, all the things I'm doing, for naught, right? The only thing that matters is awakening. He's not saying that. What he's saying is, what ultimately this Dharma is about, the reason Shakyamuni taught after his great awakening, was simply to wake people up to who and what they are. To say that everyone has the nature of Buddha, everyone has the nature of Buddha, means that everybody has the potential to awaken to their true nature, which he says here is beyond any definition. There are many people who think they're impure because of their actions, their past. Many people think they're impure because of the kind of thoughts they have or the feelings they have. And he's saying, no. The basic nature of mind is pure, right? So even if people have taken that pure nature and have, put impurities into it, it hasn't in any way contaminated the purity of that nature, i.e., and an example, of course, is water. Pure water. Can contaminants be put into water? Yeah. But if you know how to do reverse osmosis, or if you know how to do all the various processes, right, you can get all the contaminants out, and what are you left with? Pure water. The pure water that was always there, you see, that hasn't changed. You see, the nature of our mind hasn't changed. If you ask yourself, well, what is the nature of thoughts? What are they made up of? It's an interesting meditation. I encourage you to do it. What is the nature of thoughts? What is the nature of feelings? What is the nature of mind? And when you begin to look more deeply, you see that again, it's sort of like, if you have a pearl, or if you have a piece of pure gold, and you cover it with dirt, does the gold lose its value? No. All you have to do is what? Clean it. But the intrinsic value of the gold has never changed. It's just we don't see it because it's covered with dirt. So in this case now, meditation is that process whereby we allow our nature to reveal itself. But it's already here. This is really the most significant message of the Buddha's enlightenment, where the end of the journey is already here. We think it's a long journey, I got to go from here to there. But the end of the journey is already here. In our gut, in our incense offering, we say, the one who bows and the one who bows to are both by nature empty. Therefore, the communication between them is perfect. The one who bows and that which they're bowing to both have the same nature. That's profound. Everyone we encounter, those we like, those we don't like, those we agree with, those we don't agree with, those that are rich, those that are poor, those that are left, those that are of the right, those that believe in this and those that believe in that. Everyone has the same nature. But they don't see that. They don't see that we all share the common nature. What do they see? All the differences. So human beings are endlessly discriminating one from another, more and more and more and more, separating themselves from each other. People even separate themselves from themselves. Many people, their own being is an object. Their own body is an object that they're constantly manipulating as an object, trying to get people to like them or think this of them or that of them, right? I mean, we are, we've lost our connection with our true nature. So what is being said here is this is the purpose, the true purpose of Dharma. We can do all these other practices, but he said, but you haven't entered into the true meaning of Dharma. You haven't entered the room, you haven't entered the gate, the famous gateless gate. So he then, he transmitted the teaching, gave me the robe and the bowl. He says, you're now the sixth patriarch. This is a very, I mean, can you see this whole thing is going on secretly in the middle of the night? You know, you know. It's funny, whenever I read this, I think, and we think we live in fallen times. I mean, this is the time of the Buddhism is flourishing. This is the fifth and sixth patriarch in Chan, and they're having to kind of sneak around because, you'll see there's more to come in this story. But anyhow, he says, you're now the sixth patriarch. Take good care of yourself, liberate beings everywhere, spread the teaching to the next generation. Don't let it be cut off. In the past, when Bodhidharma first came to this country, no one believed him, so he transmitted this robe as an embodiment of trust to pass from one generation. But the Dharma is actually transmitted from mind to mind, so that each person realizes and understands it for themselves. Since ancient times, Buddha after Buddha has only transmitted this essence, and teacher after teacher has secretly passed on this mind. But the robe and the formalities become a point of contention. So he's saying, he basically tells them, you don't pass it on. So at midnight I received the robe and the bowl. And they went through a thing and he left. So again, Zen is called the mind-to-mind transmission. So what is this mind-to-mind transmission? What is the role of the teacher? What is the teacher transmitting to the student? They're transmitting the process by which the student can awaken to their true mind, their Buddha mind. This is the essence of what has been transmitted from teacher to student, master to disciple, since the time of Shakyamuni. And in essence, this is what's being transmitted. It's not just a doctrine. It's not just a bundle of teachings and practices, which are all important. But they ultimately are all about helping people awaken to who and what they really are. Right? I mean, what could be simpler than that? I mean, how hard is it to be myself? How hard is it to rest in my own nature? Remember, this is our own nature. This is not somebody else's nature. And you have a little more drama. So he goes away, and all of a sudden, guess what? These are several months later. He's kind of winding his way around, heading wherever the master had told him to go, either south or north. He's being pursued by a mob of 100 people. They all want to get the robe and bowl back. So this one's really great. So finally, the one who's the fastest, which is I guess he's sort of a military guy and quite a kind of a crude, rough guy. He finally catches him, I guess Wei Nang's been hiding out in the mountains, to everything, to elude this mob who are after the robe and the bowl to get it back, So finally, this guy's, just about to get him, and so Wei Nang says, "All right, take it," and he puts it down, and anyhow, the little supernatural stuff. The man comes and he tries to lift the bowl and the robe, but he can't lift it. Okay. And then so it's really kind of beautiful. So Wei Nang says, "Take it." Yeah, it's like, remember, he just, he thinks that it's what's being transmitted here is this robe and bowl. He said, "God, if you want it that bad, take it." Of course, he can't lift it when he tries. And then the pursuing monk says to him, "Please, Master, I didn't come for the robe and bowl. I came for the Dharma. I came for your Dharma. Please transmit that to me." And so Wei Nang, seeing that this monk was sincere, came out of wherever he was hiding in the bush or wherever he was hiding, came out, and you want to listen to what he says to him. He says, so again, you got to see, though, this guy's in a state. He's been pursuing Wei Nang for months, right? Got to get the bowl, got to get the bowl, got to get the bowl, right? He finally gets it, picks it up, he can't lift it, Wei Nang says, you can imagine his state, right? Just wow. So focused. And then he says, no, I want the Dharma. And so Wei Nang looks him right in the eye and says, without thinking of good or evil, what is your original face? Very famous line in Zen. We all know the face we see in the mirror, right? But that's not our original face. That is the face that was given to us by our parents, right? It's not our face. It's your parents' face. It's your ancestors' face, right? We look in the mirror, we think that's me, but that's not you. That's just, a physical coming together of your ancestors. That's not you. You're the one who's looking at that. Right? That's your original face. Original face is another way of saying it. What was your face before your parents were born? In other words, before your physical thing was created, what is the nature of that mind, that pure mind? Right? So he says to him, in other words, basically, without thinking of good or evil, says, without thinking, stop thinking right now. What is your original nature? What is your original face? Or who's looking at me right now? What is that? Immediately, that monk has a realization about the nature of his mind. What's real. At that moment, he realized that his 30 years of following the fifth patriarch had been in vain. All his work had been in vain because it had lacked this direct insight. And Wei Nang says, confirmed his awakening and says, beholding the Buddha nature within oneself is the perfect awakening, for it never depends on words. And then, so that's it. So then the rest of the sutra has a lot of his teachings. But, why don't we talk about this for a moment? Any questions, any comments? People online? We can just unmute yourself. Yeah, any questions about this? Again, this is, even though we could say this has been a story of the six patriarchs, a novitiate, we might say, It's profound because all the teachings, the fundamental teachings, I mean, the most fundamental teaching, all of Buddha's teachings comes from the Buddha's enlightenment experience. He didn't study anything. He didn't go to school. He didn't study texts. You know what I mean? I mean, he was very familiar with the Vedic texts, but everything he taught from his own awakening to his true nature. Everything he taught came from observing, deeply observing his own mind, the minds of others around him, right? And his whole purpose of teaching was to help people awaken, to become who they really are. That was his dharma. And you can see in Wei Nang, I mean, so this is 8th century, so this is 1,000 years more after the birth of the Buddha. The Buddha was what, 2,600 years ago? So 600, so maybe 1,400 years after the passing of the Buddha. You can see that this mind-to-mind transmission is still very much alive, right? Right? And in every generation and every teacher, that's how you keep it alive. You can have lots of students who are studying the Dharma and are good practitioners, good meditators, but the essence of Dharma is this mind-to-mind transmission of teacher to disciple, going back to the Buddha. So it's a very personal transmission. These days, transmission is often what? Over the internet, or virtually, or, that intimacy of this great tradition going back 2,600 years. And again, you can see, this is, over 1,000 years later, but still, it's very personal. You can, the two of them there in the middle of the night, transmitting. Transmitting what? Transmitting nothing. All the fifth patriarch does is acknowledge to Wei Nang his realization and teaches him in a way to to purify his awakening, stimulate his awakening. So any questions about any of this? Does it seem like just a ancient story, not much relevance for today? In our busy world with all we got going on and dealing with, what is this? What is this awakening to our true nature? Is it still important? What do you think? So many other things to do, right? So many other things to focus on. Is this important? Is it important to keep this alive in the world? This who and what we really are, that all human beings have the nature of Buddha, that even in an illiterate, poverty-stricken wood cellar can awaken to the same mind. Yeah. So just wait a minute. So please, if you're online, just raise your virtual hand, and who's ever monitoring the keyboard will acknowledge you in the hall. Yep.
I'm not sure that there's an answer to this necessarily, but it strikes me that the head monk who didn't quite get it, I'm sort of confused as to why he didn't get it. Like, why wasn't the relationship between the master and why couldn't the master convey it in a way that the lead monk couldn't get it?
Well, actually, there's a lot of that in here. We're going to get into his teachings. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with level of aspiration, right? A lot of it has to do with level of aspiration. I mean, pick somebody who's a great musician. Are there a lot of musicians out there in the world? Huh? A lot of musicians out there in the world? A ton of them. A lot of them good? What? Yeah. A lot of them practice every day? Yeah. How many of them are great and want to be great and are willing to do what it takes to be great? How many? Fewer. Yeah. Right? And again, that doesn't negate that there are many good musicians out there making good music, making people happy, enjoy. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't. But so the answer to your question is, what is the aspiration of the person and the aptitude? Right? I mean, obviously, somebody like Wei Nang, highly unusual, right? I mean, here he was, basically illiterate, no background, and yet, because of the nature of his own development, it was a piece of cake, right? Just boom, boom, boom. Here's a line of Dharma, and wakes right up, gets it. I mean, how many people were in the marketplace that day? How many people have heard that itinerant, whatever he is, chanting the Diamond Sutra? Right? Thousands. How many really hear it? One. Right? So it's really not about the master. It's really about the students and how many really have that aspiration. Right? Does that make sense to you? Yeah, yeah, leave it alone. Yeah. But just reflect on that. I mean, that's, again, it's not right or wrong, it's not good or bad, it's just, we're all at different places, willing to work in different ways, wanting, have different levels of aspiration, different levels of intention, different capacities. I mean, there are many variables in this, right? So again, there's a background to this. Maybe if I continue this on and get into his teachings on Thursday, there's that whole dynamic within Zen between what they call the sudden enlightenment and the gradual, right? And then it's like, yeah. So is awakening gradual, right? Sort of like what's it like? Dawn, right? Dawn. Anybody ever just kind of get up early and it's dark and you're just kind of present to the, it's right, dark, and then it gets just a little bit of light, and slowly, and then, and after 3 or 4 hours, it'll be, or a couple hours, what? Light. You can see everything clearly. That's kind of the gradual path, right? And then there's this other path which said, no, because our nature's already here, it's so like Wei Nang, so he's an example of the sudden path. It's like, here's something, bingo. His mind is ready. Or that monk who was chasing him down, right? I mean, he just stops him in his tracks, hits him with a piece of Dharma that turns him around. What's your original nature? Who's looking at me? Right? Stopped him. Sudden. So it's both. I mean, if I'm asking my opinion, it's both. Different people respond and work differently, have different energies. But the sameness is everyone has the same nature. It is the nature of mind. Everyone's mind has this pure, uncontaminated, knowing, spacious mind. Uncontaminated. That truth is truth. It's just various methodologies to awaken to that, to uncover that.
Fred, we have two online.
Yeah, good.
We have Rita, and then after Rita, Dana.
Good. So Rita, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Good.
So, I mean, you asked a question, is it important? Is it important now in these days? And I think it is. And I'm also wondering if, we think we're quite sophisticated now with our technologies and intelligence and all the knowledge that we have. But I wonder if it really just makes it more complicated for us in these times rather than, a person just pounding rice. Like that seems like it's so much more simple. You have the time to just, I don't know what I'm trying to say, like more connected to the basics of life as opposed to how things are now. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
It just seems like it might have been easier in more simple times to awaken. Not that we can't do it now with
Right.
intentions. Yeah.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I think there's certainly a lot of validity that these days, for all the reasons of the nature of this post-industrial, overly connected, interconnected through media, stimulation from the first moment we get up to we go to bed. Yeah, the mind is very stimulated, and there's so much more distraction than if you're in a mill pounding rice all day. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that, the nature of mind hasn't changed, but I think that the nature of people's minds have changed. They're just much more distractible, much busier, and our values, we don't value this, right? I was saying to somebody the other day, it's hard for us to believe that in ancient times, like in India, the major monasteries, the universities, were Buddhist monasteries. Nalanda, I mean, these were universities, multiple colleges. The best minds were studying Dharma. The best minds were practicing this. Now the best minds are doing what? Managing hedge funds, finding ways to make more money, developing, artificial intelligence, developing more ways for us to kill each other. I mean, we have this intelligence, we have this incredible creativity, but what are we doing with it? Yeah, so, this, yeah, we live in a very materialistic culture, consumer culture. We know all this. Yeah, but, and yet, in the midst of all that, the original pure nature of our mind has not changed one iota. It is right here, and is always accessible. And it's not that different, but it's, there's got to be a turning about. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, thank you, Rita. Dana, you're there?
Dana, would you like to bow in?
Dana bowing in. Hi, thank you for...
Can't hear you, Dana.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Whoop. Now we try again.
Test.
Can we see Dana? Just hold on, Dana. Can you spotlight her, Angie? Oh, there you are. Okay, I can see you now. Let's see if we can hear you.
Yeah, Dana, we're having a hard time with your volume. I don't know if you can get closer or just maybe have to really speak loudly.
I know, she's in Denver, so it could be, well,
that work? Let's see.
Can see you but can't hear you, Dana. What? Yeah.
Can you hear me
Check
now?
your Yeah. Oh, yeah. What'd you do? Say it.
And now we can hear me.
We can hear you and see you. Sure. All right.
Thanks for your patience. Um, uh, I'm trying to think about how to make this succinct. Um, I'm chewing on what you're sharing, and I guess it seems to me like both of the poems seem really important.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the same time, like it's like
Yeah.
a relative and ultimate
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Good. Yep.
Uh, like I think about, I'm out here in Denver, everybody's doing mushrooms all the time, and they can see, oh, like the mind is so spacious, but then like, they realize they come down and then their mind's a mess.
All right.
And so like, it's like, well, we got to clean the mirror
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
Okay. So sounds like I'm
Yeah.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me affirm what you're saying. So it's really, in traditional Chan Buddhism, they talk about there's the side of practice and there's the side of realization, right? So from the side of practice, does that verse about the mind is essentially pure and you just got to keep cleaning the mirror all the time, keep it so it can radiate its purity? Yeah, that's the side of practice. But from the side of realization, there's no mirror, there's no stand, there's nothing to clean, there's no dirt, that's the side of realization.
Hmm.
So it's a balance. It's a balance. And, so that point is well taken. So, it's the answer. I think it's important to have both, especially in this day. I mean, speaking about readers, because we live in times where the level of stimulation and the level of distraction, right, is so, overbearing and pervasive. Yeah, that one has to be incredibly alert and guarding of one's mind these days, right? That's from the practice side. Yeah, we got to keep it. We have to very consciously keep it clean. I mean, that's why if you think about, Thai's teachings of the nutriments and everything, we have to really be careful about what we put in, because it's so easy to get toxins, toxic conversations, toxic news, toxic media, into our mind, and that affects it, right? At the same time, the innate purity of mind never changes.
Hmm.
It is unchangeable. And to really know that, right, to know that makes the cleaning much easier. You see?
Yeah.
If you think your stuff, Dana, is like a lot of people say to me, my stuff is heavy. My karma is heavy. You know what I mean? My mind states are heavy. If you think your mind states are heavy, then they're heavy. You know what I'm saying? But if they're empty of any solidity. It's. Can you see? So having realization of the nature of mind makes that kind of work at the relative level, that practice at the relative level, just much more easier. I often say it's like if you have a dog and your dog's not trained, right? If you ever go for a walk with that dog, it's always just people are struggling. You see some people are always yanking on the dog and pulling him back, and the dog's going. You know what I mean? It's not a good time. But if you have a well-trained dog, you walk with them and they don't pull you, and it's an enjoyable time. And if they see something, they see another dog and they want to go, you just kind of come back. A little tug. It's not a struggle.
Hmm.
People, they're struggling with their mind.
Hmm.
There's a fight.
Hmm.
So realization makes things a lot more easier. But on the other hand, yeah. So you're actually, and we'll end here. But yeah. So both the gathas. I mean, don't forget, the fifth patriarch offered incense to the gata, and he says, "You practice this, you will not fall into lower states." So that was his own affirmation. Yeah, this is this is good to practice. But he said, but this is not, you haven't entered the door of realization yet. Okay?
Yeah.
We
Thank you.
clear? Okay.
Yes. Thank
So
you.
I do like to stay on time. So it's 8:45. Thank you for joining. Hopefully you've enjoyed Sixth Patriarch, and we'll see whether we go on to another sutra or whether I just pull out some of his teachings. His teachings are really wonderful. We just kind of, you got to, I mean, this is just the beginning. He hasn't started teaching yet. His career as a teacher, I think he taught for 30 or 40 years. But again, I think his story is so unusual in the annals of Buddhist masters. It's worth attending to. So let me just share the merit. Whatever benefit may have come to us tonight from our listening, absorbing the teachings of the sixth Chan Zen Patriarch, may it bring benefit to ourselves, may it bring benefit to everyone we encounter, and may it aid in the healing and transformation of the world. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining me. We will continue on Thursday. Okay. Thank you. Good night.